What's going on, family? How are you? How are you? How are you? Let me know if I'm coming in loud and clear down below in the comments. As you can see, there is a new setup. We're in a new space. I feel good, feel refreshed. Apologize for the lighting coming from this way. As y'all know, usually look a bit brighter from this way. So there usually is a big, massive light. So I need to figure out a solution for that, which will be coming probably next week. But get it all settled in. Let me know how your Labor Day has been going. If you've been laboring, that's awesome. If you have been enjoying the fruits of your labor, let me know that as well, because I feel like everybody now is like, man, Labor Day, I may be doing a little something, but I think I'm just going to enjoy the fruits of my labor. Everything that I've labored for, I'm going to enjoy. Okay, so let me know down below. If you're new here, my name is Dr. B. I'm a holistic life and business coach and strategist for entrepreneurs and thought leaders. Also a trader in the options market primarily, but I do trade futures as well. So I do talk about the futures market. So if I have any people that are like, hey, I'm new, I'm interested in futures or options or trading or long-term investing as well, the charts help us with that. So if you're new here, welcome to the family. You can check the links down below. There's a special code, especially for those that have not jumped into Leverage University, which is our Discord, where we have more learnings, teachings, education, courses, trainings, and also our live trading floor. If you aren't able to jump in live trading, I think that's a lot of qualms for people, right? It's a sticking point. Like, hey, Brian, I work, I do other things. I can't jump in live in the morning. But is there a way I can participate? Yes, I do post trade ideas. And there's a lot of community members that take those trades and ideas and long-term investing strategies as they are busy professionals and entrepreneurs. So there's a Labor Day link down below. If you click that 3-day link trial down below, if you're new, okay, you can type in Labor Day and it gives you a pretty decent discount. All right. So you're more than welcome to check that out. If you have been waiting, now is the time to join in this week, especially going into a very pivotal time, which is the September time in the stock market when everyone returns back from the holidays, the summer, and the market starts picking up a little bit more volatility. So without further ado, comment down below where you're tuning in from. I'll make this short, quick, to the point. We stay together roughly about an hour 15 or so. I will move through. It seems I can see how many people and who's jumping in, jumping out. So if it's a short amount of people, if it's my newbies, if it's my core group, I'll go ahead and just speed up the process a little bit so we can get to the value. All right, cool. All right, let's jump into it here. All right, so here's our Discord. You're more than welcome. We have a hefty amount of members here, and I always just am very transparent. It's like, Brian, there's 900 something people in here paying you. No, because I've been running this Discord for roughly around 4.5, 5 years now, right? And this is where my full community is. So coming from Clubhouse, memberships, other offers, other ideas, free channels, all this type of stuff. So we'll be shifting that just slightly, potentially in the future, kind of condensing this a little bit, letting Leverage University be our main hub for our trainings, financial advice, trading floor. But if y'all been seeing my content on IG, I truly love transformations, not just transactions. So I'll still be doing trading. I will still be doing these Sunday stock market analysis, but I've been missing and craving that thought leadership. And I think that has gotten skewed just a little bit with trading, which is fine. So I'm still gonna be pointing out trading advice, showing up for live trading, doing those things. But if you're ever wondering what I'm doing after an hour and a half, 2 hours in live trading, I'm typically coaching one-on-one clients, life coaching, building funnels, building their businesses in the back end, sales, marketing, structures, NLP sessions, all those things in the back end. So those are two separate entities, right? Two separate ways of thinking, like stock market, life, I need transformation. I don't know what I'm doing in my life. I need purpose, right? So they coincide. And that's what I think helps, in the stock market, is having a good psychology, having a good mindset. So if you're intrigued by that, if you're new, if you didn't know that, I've done a lot. Ask down below. I can maybe do just a talking head video on here on the trading channel saying, who is this dude? What else has he done? All right. Cool. So trading floor here, we've got all of our ideas organized. We'll organize here underneath these different folders. Trading floor, we even talk about our crypto right there. And just shouting out some wins from everybody last week. We had some pretty decent wins, a little shaky towards the end of August, some fake outs back and forth. We just kept pushing all-time highs, and then we, obviously had the long weekend this weekend. So Friday had no type of bounce or recovery at all. We started kind of that descending blow of end of August into September where people were taking their profits. But we've got to be careful this week because, as you see the title, will we actually have a full September kind of sell-off? Like, will that actually come? Or are we going to see some type of, maybe bounce and recovery before we fall again? And that's what I want to talk about today. All right. So as always, let me know down below. Hit me a like, comment. I know I appreciate some of you. Trent, if you're on here, appreciate you, brother. As always, looks like that backyard looks absolutely relaxing, man. But you always share that you're learning and the things that are on here. I appreciate you. Marlon, if you're on here, other people, if you're on here, I appreciate you all. All right. Earnings whispers always does really well just about outlining, what earnings we have for this week. We still have some big players in on the docket this week. And I want to point out right here on Tuesday, we have Zscaler, ZS. So that is in the cybersecurity space. So very similar to CrowdStrike, PanW, right? So this one could move pretty decently. So I do want to pay attention to that. Dollar Tree, that's more of a long term. It's kind of like Walmart. It's in the consumer space. So I'll pay attention. I don't know if it gives an opportunity to trade, may look at it on Wednesday morning, but some of the earnings plays, especially if it's not a, big tech company or even a cybersecurity company or anything in that space, it's not really going to move. I like to settle those in. So we did trade Zoom, but it took Zoom like a day or so to make that move, right? I have serious FOMO on the move that, what was that? Snowflake made, right? And that was taken the day after earnings, traded at that earnings, and just kept trending up. And then it finally made that move back from 250 back to like 236. So about a $15 drop. That was the move I was looking for the day of. So these moves do happen, but if they're not a major tech company, we had a killer NVIDIA trade after their earnings, shorting NVIDIA back down. I talked about that last week, and that trade played out perfectly. So we'll see some other trade ideas. And just keep that in back of your mind that September is typically a pullback month. All right. So if you're trying to catch bottoms like Friday, if you're in live trading, like we saw support and we tried that bounce for calls off of support and we didn't get it. That's kind of potentially what we may see is some lower highs forming. So as people try to catch the bottom and the bounce and to go higher, right? It might bounce higher and then come back lower and then lower and then lower to finish off the month. And then we find a bottom, a true bottom, to ride it back up into the end of the year, right? So keep that just kind of in the back of your mind if you're not in live trading with us or if you're not in another group and you're doing things on your own, okay? Salesforce, big one there. C3AI, another big one there. And then Asana, kind of want to pay attention to that. Where's AVGO? Right here. This is the day, right? There's always a kind of a day towards the end of the week where our big players come in. Broadcom, I've been killing Broadcom earnings afterwards. I think the last time Broadcom had earnings traded very, very well into the springtime after they posted. So Broadcom, if you've never traded it, moves very similar. I think we caught a really nice call option on Broadcom in the group a couple months back towards the beginning of the summer. So Broadcom right there. We'll be looking at that, very similar to NVIDIA. It's in the semiconductor sector. So Broadcom will move the market along with the semiconductor sector. So semiconductors, high alert this week, all right? Lululemon, we've been watching that. So I still have not gotten my position in Lululemon. I may grab some shares up, but I kind of want to, I'll talk about it. I'll get into that. Lululemon is like one of those, it's like this could be a big, big move, or it could drop a little bit lower, which I would actually love. Just drop one more time and I'm ready. All right. As I said, if you never traded earnings before, go check out that video on the channel. All right. DocuSign, that could be decent. UPath, well, as we'll check out that. But yeah, Figma, I forgot about this one. This one is kind of, it's been coming on the scene this year. I haven't done too much due diligence on it. If you have, let me know down below. But I know that Figma name has come up. I haven't done too much due diligence as far as the company, looking at it, looking at the chart, the financials, all that stuff. I am familiar with Figma, but have not done any due diligence on the actual chart. So maybe we'll take a look at that. All right, cool. Let's look at our economic calendar for the week. All right, today's Labor Day. We have a short week. So if you're still learning, if you're still like, man, I'm only a year in, I'm only, 3-6 months in. If you haven't seen a full cycle of a year actually actively trading, looking at this week in and week out, just remember these notes of a short week, right? We want to be mindful if we're trading options, the contracts that we choose. So on Tuesday, we can trade weeklies. If we get a good move, if we get something, post data right here, 10 a.m. data, right after that data report. So if we can snipe something, scalp something before, kind of get some cash flow going for the month of September, right? Any new month, if you're trading more specifically, I'll talk about my long-term investors as well. If you're trading more specifically, it always feels good to start green, okay? So if we can, either be patient, but y'all know in live trading, if I see something, I'll take it in the first 5 minutes like I did with NVIDIA. If I see it and I like it, it's A+, I will take it. If you want to stick with your own trading plan, right, while we're trading live, or if you're trading on your own, you're welcome to say, hey, this month, if it's the start of the week, Monday, in this case, it's Tuesday, I'm going to watch for the first 30 minutes. Like, these are trading rules that you can have, right? So my trading rule is typically to wait after data, but if I see an A+ setup, I will lower my risk as far as the contracts that I take, the amount of position that I take on the trade, and just lower that. Just say my position size is normally, $1,000, just make it even, okay? And I want to cut that in half. So just say $1,000 is 10 contracts. Each contract is $100 in options, okay? You would want to cut that in half, or even cut it even further. So instead of doing your normal position size of 10 contracts at $1,000 position, you may do $500, right? Or even 3 contracts at $300. And that's lowering your position size when data's in the way or earnings is in the way. Just bring down that size of your position, scalp it, and then when you get more confirmation, you can jump back in and say, cool, I like it now, I'm clear, I can jump in my full size. So that's what I've been teaching some of the people that have been coming into the community that have been new. So shout out to y'all if y'all been kind of, it's called scaling in, or just lowering your position size, reducing your risk just slightly. So you can put any number you want, right? So yeah, let me know if you have any questions on that. September 2nd PMI. So this is going to be good for a lot of volatility. September 3rd, we have job openings. So this week is going to be pretty important as far as how our jobs data is doing. Our consumer sentiment report. Brian, why in the world did the market kind of sell off a lot on Friday and never recovered? I believe it should have recovered, right? Which I think it will at the beginning of this month to kind of start off the month. If the data is good, we should pop back a little bit if we're not already after hours. But it's that consumer sentiment. So consumers are still a little bit shaky. Guess what? Trump obviously dropped that, hey, y'all thought tariffs were done? Like, no. We still talking about tariffs. So, isn't it ironic the time that, these data releases drop or the news drops? It's like, man, the market was pushing all-time highs, and it still is, but that data drops when everyone's getting like, man, we're gonna, finish off the month of August with a nice squeeze back to the highs, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. We will see. ADP employment. We know that the job market is absolute crap right now. Okay. We know that. If you don't know that, I don't know. I guess people are living underneath the rock. Okay. It's crazy. It's crazy. The wage to inflation ratio is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you just look at the housing market plus wages plus cost of groceries. Like, it's not complaining for anyone if someone's mentioning. It's just, okay, this is what it is. How do we mitigate it? And then how is this sustainable? Like, more people are trying to, like, that's why trading in general has become more popular. Kind of like 2020, 2019, where it's like, man, I need to know how to trade. But that's when that Forex market was hype, and it was a little bit scammy in my opinion. People didn't really understand options to the level that they needed to. They jumped in too quickly, made a little bit of money, and they didn't know the ins and outs of, oh man, I didn't know data was releasing, or I didn't know anything about earnings, or the contract. I didn't know that you couldn't hold your contract longer. Why'd you take it out? I've got an expiration until the end of the week. That theta decay. So the little bitty nuances now that people are trying to understand is what's going to help you become a better trader within options. But also, if you do trade futures or you trade something else, I know my boy Ben, if he's on here, he trades equity. That just means you're trading shares. That's still, you got to know the management of that, about where to buy, where to sell, how much you're putting in. All right. So unemployment, employment data, jobs data, going to be very volatile here towards it. If this doesn't come in any good, we're going to start that selling this week. We might pop at the beginning of the week, and then we may start that selling towards the end of the week, especially if jobs aren't good, if that job unemployment rate isn't good. And then we've got PPI and CPI next week. Okay. So like last time, we could see some selling coming into these big data reports. So if jobs, again, isn't good, we could have some pop at the beginning of the week, sell into the end of the week, pop maybe again one more time. And then if that PPI and CPI comes in a little bit shaky because that consumer sentiment wasn't decent, that needs to come in good. These data reports are very important. All right. The next 2 weeks. All right. All righty. Let's jump into the charts. My favorite place where the money is made. Let me check the chat. Remember, if you're new here, Dr. Brian, could you please TA gold call and MU puts? Yes, I'll go ahead and do that. Appreciate you. Tanvir. All right, let's jump into that really quick, Tanvir. I'll just go ahead and do that very quickly, just so I don't forget. So MU, this was, let me know down below with a 1 if you remember me talking about this pre-market. Literally pre-market on Friday, I'm like, MU's my top watch, and it just falls right immediately. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It goes right to target. So MU, right at my level, 123. I like it. It's forming lower highs on a daily time frame. And you can kind of see where this is coming here is that we got a gap below. And what I'm looking for, some people say they like these drawings. It gives them a visual. This is kind of what I'm looking to happen. Okay. And if it breaks, some key levels and starts getting back below these lows, 100 could be back in sight. And then you see those light gray areas. Those are my gaps, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen necessarily, but that is a possibility if lower highs start to form and we start doing something like that, right? So the equal lows would be roughly at these, this previous low, which is roughly around 105, 106, okay, where it dropped below. So got to break the equal lows to form a lower low. But other than that, that is the target right now, is back down to about 105, 106, Tanvir, if you're thinking about the bottom end of the range, okay? So I do like MU. MU is in the semiconductor sector, if you don't know. Remember what I said, that with AVGO, if AVGO comes in decent or kind of performs maybe like NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA popped and then dropped on earnings, right? That is a possibility where MU could also see some profit taking. So what I would like to see on MU is I would like to see my resistance still hold up around 123, but I'm prepared for this 125 area potentially. So if I draw it out like that, that's more so of what I'm prepared for. I wouldn't want it to keep dropping, immediately. I would want one more big kind of pop like that up into there, fail, and then that would be a heavier A+ setup entry for me. If I can see a lower high off of that level again, 125, 124 and some change, I want to watch that zone up here, okay? You see this down here, if I enter puts down here, which is a possibility, like this could be a small entry underneath 120, right? But that's a big area. What if it squeezes back up, right? You enter puts here and it squeezes back up to the highs like that, right? So this would be a smaller kind of, A-, I would say even a B entry, where I'm looking at this type of situation, right? I see some failures and then, something like that. That's a possibility. Just kind of rolls over. You see what happened here. It pops into that level 120, fails it, and then comes back to like 115, right? So that could be a small scalp, but I would get more interested if it popped all the way back up to an equal high. You see there's a lot of sellers rejected very harshly right there. I got sellers stacked up here at 123. And then I've got, more of a confirmed area up here at 125 where I've got a lot more sellers stacked up, right? So the only concern, I wouldn't say concern, but is it kind of broke this downtrend right here, right? Popped up, rejected. So if it rejects that 120 again, this is a possibility. Does that help, Tanvir? So bottom end of the range, 115 would be kind of your short-term target. So you're about $3 away from that, roughly. If it breaks that, that's where underneath that 114 level, that's where there's really no liquidity. Straight up move, and then you can see a straight down move. And I like MU as well because the contracts for trading in options are fairly inexpensive and you can put time on it, right? So if I go here to just say I wanted to put a week on MU, right? And my target is maybe down, I would maybe even start looking at September 19th, right? If my target is down there, look at how much interest is on this side here. Obviously there's interest on that 125, right? So I chart it first, and then I can look at the contracts and say, okay, that 124, 125 is possible if we have good data or AVGO pops. But also there's a lot of interest down at these levels, right? So that 110, right? Even in our community, more specifically, I teach my clients and community members that, my contract price that I like is underneath $200 per contract for day trading, right? So anywhere between the 100s for shorter term contracts upwards, towards the 150s, the 180s. If you pay over $200, that's perfectly fine, right? But $300 per contract, that's perfectly fine as well. But I like looking at contracts. If I can get it, I can scale in underneath 200. So that 110 is kind of far away in my opinion, but it's possible that could move. So I would keep your eye on that 110 is very possible. That's that gap fill, all right? So take a look at that September 19th, maybe, 115, 110s. Keep your eye on MU. Does that help, Tanvir? Gold, GLD. Okay. As the market is pulling back, gold is breaking out of this kind of rising wedge bull flag here. You can see there, gold's getting really strong back again. And gold is an asset that people buy back into when the market is a little bit shaky, right? So if gold is going higher, right, the stock market, or more specifically SPY and potentially QQQ, NASDAQ, ES, S&P, right, those could pull back. So you're seeing this rotation we talked about last week when I said stocks are rotating, right? So big tech, right? I'm not saying the big tech is going to just crash or fall out or anything like that. We don't know. No one knows. It's a possibility. It happened in 2022, right? But this right here is an indication that rotating into those more quote unquote stable assets. So gold here, I would look at, maybe this breakout above this 317. It's going to 320. Right. But anytime you have a breakout of a wedge, I typically try to wait for a pullback just slightly. All right. There's that breakout. And you typically have a pullback to retest the wedge. Okay. If you look at, I'll show you what it looks like here. But typically when you have a breakout of a new wedge like that, you might have a deep pullback and then a higher formation again. It would look something like that. It's not very good, but all right. So I always get very, cautious about a breakout above a new high. I want to confirm it and be patient on the pullback. But yeah, gold looking great there. If you trade futures in gold, GC, I would definitely keep an eye on this as well. As you can see on a 4-hour time frame, it is a little bit overbought on a RSI. Last time, look what happened at this RSI right here. When it got overbought on a 4-hour, pull back deeply, and then built and went higher. Last time it went 4 hour higher, 317, pull back to 300, right? And we do got some gaps below. So I'd be careful on longing gold or calls on gold, GLD more specifically in the options market. Maybe be patient and waiting for that pullback to see if this is a true breakout, or are we a little bit overextended and you want to short it, okay? So I'd watch that 320 level. If it squeezes up to 320 on GLD, that could be a rejection point. That could be a good risk to reward if it continues to grind higher like that. I'd wait for a break of trend and take it back down actually for puts personally, right? You just need a break of trend. So draw that trend line. All right, I've talked about this before. Draw that trend line when you get a nice grind up like this. That's one of my most, trusted A+ setups is a break of trend. I know it's strong, but it's getting up here to where profit taking could be, and it could pull back, potentially $5, $8, all right, back to those previous highs of, 315 or so. Does that help, Tanvir? Hopefully. Good time to buy NVIDIA, short at 320. Yep, exactly. We're on the same page. Yep. That is one of the biggest things that I've heard before in feedback is, Brian, I didn't even think about shorting the market. Like, it looks strong. There's a big, there's a big green candle, big A green candle. Why in the world would I short it? Trading is different than long-term investing. Okay. We can trade both ways. So that means that if I miss the move up, right, even though it's the strongest stock in the market, like I told my neighbors about it. So if I have any of my neighbors on here in Vegas, like I told them, I said, I'm shorting NVIDIA. I'm shorting it. After it pops one more time, I'm shorting it. I think I told the community inside of Leverage, I'm shorting it. Right? If I told someone at Starbucks I'm shorting NVIDIA, they'd be like, why? I have NVIDIA shares at, $50, $80. Like, why would you short it? So the mindset of a trader in a short span of time is different from a long-term investor. And that's really why a lot of people are joining these communities or trying to watch these YouTube videos for free. Is like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get that concept. How do you make money when it's going down? Right? There's buyers and sellers. Okay. So I just wanted to touch on that with a little bit of hopefully confidence or inspiration to you, that take the emotion out of it of what you're actually looking at and saying, man, I go to Amazon all the time. Amazon's a great company. I hold Amazon shares in my long term. Why would I short it? Right? You do not have to do that. Right? That's just the advantage of being able to trade and make money both ways. Right? There are people in the market that only wait for pullbacks. They're like, Brian, I don't know how to short the market. I don't agree with it. It doesn't make sense to me. They just wait for big red days, miss all the money back down, and then buy the dip and ride it back up. Right? And that's the beauty in the market, is that anytime, any place, any stock, you can make money. I don't know anywhere else you can do that. Can you make money in real estate? I'm not knocking on real estate. Can you make money in real estate when the market is going down? Like, does your home go up in value when the market goes down? Right? So that's the advantage of understanding the stock market or just trading in general, is you can short it. Cool. All right. Let's go to NVIDIA. Okay. I'm just answering questions in the chat really quick before. And this was the trade that I'm still interested in. Okay. I am still interested in this pop. Okay. So I appreciate this question, is that this was a trade that I took a 30% loss on. Some of our community members took a loss on. We were very transparent about it. Right. I have a good relationship with hopefully our community members inside of Leverage, that we make money, but also it's like, hey, this was a good trade, just didn't work out today. Right. So I always mention Dreama, because she's like, the trade eventually works out. It just might be a little bit early for it. And that's okay. You just got to cut it. But I don't, dismiss my trade ideas. So here's NVIDIA. Okay. NVIDIA had decent earnings, right? If you read into their earnings report, I talked about it on, I think, a previous video, that NVIDIA had good earnings and it fell back into this support range of roughly 170 to 172, okay? So all these buyers are kind of stacked up here. Now, yes, NVIDIA does look like, I'm gonna address this, it does look like a little bit of a head and shoulders type of situation here, to where, yes, it could fall lower than this, okay? So you're asking, where do we buy NVIDIA? That's the question, okay? I personally like NVIDIA back closer to 150. Like, Brian, this NVIDIA is going to fall from 180 to 150. That kind of freaks me out, okay? That is where the best buy zone is, in my opinion, is closer to 150. That is the previous high, and we're starting to break structure, right? You see that uptrend, 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 break the uptrend, retest it, can't get back above, and we're coming down. Now, we could get one more pop like I was trying to do on Friday, and if that forms and we break those lows, that's how it would look. Let me show you what that looks like, because I have a lot of visual people. Here's Palantir. Up at the highs, right? Breaks a little structure, right? Pulls back deeply to a better buy zone. Got pretty close, right? Right at that 150 level, almost equivalent to the levels of NVIDIA. Goes from 190 back to 144. So if you're asking for a better buy zone, right? If you're like, I kind of want to load up heavy on NVIDIA, or where's the next big buy zone, I would say closer to 150. So turn your alerts on for, you can turn it on Yahoo Finance. You can put it on Robinhood. Say, hey, let me know when NVIDIA gets below 170. Let me know when NVIDIA gets below 160, right? So if you're busy, you're at work, you can turn alerts on, and it can tell you, as long as you have charted it out and you don't want to miss it, and you're like, hey, I have $1,000 to the side, I have $10,000 to the side, I have $50,000 to the side, I want to buy something, but I want to buy at the right level. Turn your alerts on so you can go in your brokerage and say, hey, buy this, right? You can also put limit orders in. So if you're a long-term investor and you didn't know that, some people did not know that, you can put limit orders in to say, buy NVIDIA, buy 10 shares of NVIDIA at 150. So you can go ahead and put that order into your brokerage, whether you use JP Morgan, whether you use Charles Schwab, whether you use Robinhood for your long-term and 401ks, whether your company does it. You can tell your financial advisor, you can put that order in ahead of time. And that's why the charts help so much, because you can chart it yourself and say, man, I want to be where the big money buyers are. Right? So if I go back to NVIDIA, and I have a couple of buy zones for NVIDIA, same thing I did with Ethereum, right? Same chart. Where are the big money buyers? At 2,700, at 2,400, and back here, where it dropped all the way down to 1,500. So it will give you those opportunities. It might be a year, it might be 6 months, but things pull back, all right? And you went from, if someone bought at 4,200 up here on Ethereum, right? They waited, what was that? A full almost year and a half for it to just get back to break even, and then go to $5,000 and then almost back to break even again. Right? So do not chase. Wait for those pullbacks. Does that make sense? Hopefully that helps. If you're more advanced and I don't know who you are, welcome. If you are a newbie, I like to explain things if no one knows anything. So if I'm talking to an advanced person and I explained it, cool. If I'm talking to someone new and you appreciate the explanation, there you go. So I like this buy area. This is a low liquidity rise here as well. All that means is when you have a straight up move and there's really no red pullbacks, what do I say? That straight up move can typically, when there's no liquidity, that just means it just keeps going and going and going. The volume's very low, right? All summer NVIDIA, just from June until August, just kept going higher, kept going higher, kept going higher. There was no volatility back and forth like this. Big moves back, big moves back, big pullback, big rise. That's a low volume area. So when you have low volume rises like that, you can have a straight down move like that. Everyone see that? Low volume area right there, straight up move, gave it all the way back, right? Scared some people, but it went right into a buy zone and then went higher. That help? Now in the short term, we got a weekly red candle here. We still have a lot of buyers sitting and stacked right at 171. So that's why I'm expecting, if this holds, we do have a little bit of a gap right there. As you can see, that would be the short-term trade idea. So we could take two trades on it. We could take a call option back up. If this breaks back above 175, you're going to get a squeeze back into that 180 to fill that gap right there. But guess what? This is also right at that lower high trend line. That is where I would be looking to reject it one more time and then get that fall like that if it doesn't break out. See that? How you can wait for that setup? All right. Now, if we break above 185 and AVGO gets strong or something like that, I'll be prepared if it gets back above here and goes there. But there's a lot of selling stacked up here. So maybe it wants to pull deeper and then go back higher. Cool. Here's my NVIDIA. Yeah, ABCD. Okay. Thanks. Good for a noob like me. Yeah. I'm appreciative. Yeah. I'm appreciative of you being here. I want folks that know literally nothing to come in and be like, wow, I just learned more in 1 hour than I have in the last 5 to 10 years. That's my win. Right. David, what's going on, David? Last time you said you liked NVIDIA at 80, 90, it happened not too long after that, and shares were around 150 fall. It definitely popped. Yeah, it happened. And that doesn't mean, I'll toot my horn that I think I'm very good at technical analysis. I'll go ahead and be confident in that. But all I'm doing is reading the chart. So when you hear someone say, man, it's pulling back to there, right? A bunch of positive YouTubers on here, a bunch of educational people that you may watch, other people in the stock market, you may watch multiple channels, and we say, hey, wait for this level. It's not that we're trying to scam or do anything or say, scare anyone out of their position. We're just reading a chart. And chart patterns repeat themselves over time. Okay. So we're not saying when it's going to happen, but it's coming soon. All right. So turn your alerts on. All right, here's where David was talking about. It was at 150. I said right here, be patient, right? This is your buy area right there. See, I pulled back, heavy buyers, previous resistance, heavy buyers right there. I like it back at 80 to 90 bucks and it pulled back to there. So now I like this roughly around 150. Maybe it gives us a deeper pullback into 140. But that 150, anywhere around 150 is where I think the next big buyer zone would be for the higher move. Cool. All right. Let's go over SPY. Okay, get rid of these levels here. A new month. Let's analyze how the month of August finished off. And I've got this trend line, as you can see, this low volume trend line here where we've had no real break of that trend. That is a low volume summer move. We bounced all the way from the lows in April and got a little bit of volatility. I thought we would have gotten a little bit deeper pullback right there. All right, back to 555 or 550. And that would have been, in my opinion, a little bit better. It would look something like that. But we didn't. And then it just stayed in this channel. All right. That's good for people's long term. It's also good if you traded, intraday and we traded back and forth, or you just held something, that's fine. Right. But anytime I have a low volume trend like that, that trend breaks, it gets aggressive. Okay. So it happened last time. I keep mentioning this. I know it's like a broken record. Like, Brian, you mentioned it last week and it didn't happen. You mentioned it last week. It didn't happen. I know that. I trade day in and day out, but when it does happen, I'm not surprised. So for example, right here, right, I was trading day in and day out, whatever the, the support resistance as I got into my day trading levels. But right there, grind, 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 breaks that trend, gets aggressive, right? So I'm watching where that it gets a little bit exhausted and we get a bigger weekly candle. And I'm still looking at that 600 level on the S&P, on SPY more specifically. Still watching kind of this level right there, that 610 to 600 level, which would be right around that previous high retest. You can see we really never retested on a big level here, right? It never came back and we never got a candle really to retest it strongly after that big breakout candle right there, right? So I'm on a weekly. So we have, a couple of weeks or a week candle do like this and it starts doing like that. That's kind of what's in my mind that I would like. I would get very interested in saying, here's the dip, everybody. Here's that September, October dip that we were looking for. All right, let's try to be mindful and pick up and figure out what we want to buy and see if we can get that nice squeeze into the end of the year. Okay. So if you're new, just know that September, again, is typically a seasonality of selling or profit taking. All right. Wall Street is back in their offices. They're coming back from summer break. They're looking at their long-term portfolio. They're looking at their billion-dollar hedge fund. They're like, hey, our clients' portfolios have done great. They enjoyed their summers. Let's go ahead and trim some profits, maybe get a little bit more out and redistribute, right, for the fall season and into the end of the year. Okay. So I'm looking for one more pop on the S&P back to the highs. And then we'll see there. Even if it can trend up here, I know if Ben's on here and that trend continues one more time and we get up into that 6 and we break into new all-time highs above 650, all right, then we can squeeze a little bit more. But yeah, the market's still strong, it's still trending upwards, but I'm keeping my head on a swivel. Even if I don't trade it, I'm looking for that big break, and that's where I'll get a little bit heavier and get a little bit more aggressive. I think the break would be more so right around here. That would be that trend break would be 640. 638 to 640. That's your support right now. That's your big support. I think I mentioned it last week. Okay. This area right here is that big support that needs to hold up. Because if we break that, then that's going to break that trend. You see how aggressive it got here? So if it pulls back to that 638 right there, that is where you want to watch. Does that hold to go higher? Okay. If not, there's where that break is, and it will look very similar to this. Okay. So everything's been working from our Sundays. If you've been paying attention in the markets, levels have been holding up. They've been good. All right. So right now, 643 is holding up on SPY. So we got 643, 638, and we've got 650 roughly at the highs. Okay. We good there? Let me check the chat. Okay, cool. Keep pushing. QQQ, just interrupt me at any time down below in the chat. Say, hey, Brian, I'm good. That was good. Or just stop me any point to ask any questions. All right. QQQ, still holding these supports. All right. See how we got that low volume just fall. This is just profit taking right here on Friday. So we got a gap down, profit taking. It continued. There were no buyers that stepped in. And this is when I told the community, I said, hey, y'all know, what do we look for? We look for that falling wedge breakout. If it starts holding and we start getting a build and a build and a build, that's when we can get that low volume or low liquidity squeeze back up to retest that level. And we can start getting that one more time. All right. So that's what I'm kind of looking for to see if we can get back above. So if we're back above that 574 on QQQ, 574, obviously we got to see some buyers step back up, because if not, this could just be a bear flag and we could come lower like that as a possibility. We do not have to fill that gap up there. Okay. Do you see what happened here? You see how we fell, started holding, and then we got that big squeeze back up, and then we reclaimed that level, 568, held that. It would look like the same thing. Break, hold, break. Y'all see that? So got to get back above that I would say 575, just to be safe, but 574.50. Back above this zone. Okay. Let's look at the RSI. There's a little bit of divergence that I was looking at. Okay, a little bit of divergence. Divergence just means the opposite. Let me explain it right. Divergence here on the charts more specifically is when I have an RSI trending up off the lows and then I have something trending down. Do you see how it's going down? Right? Down right there, up right there. As a divergence, that's typically more so bullish divergence. So that's what I was looking for on Friday, is for the market to see some buyers and try to get one last squeeze. Right? So that's more so what I'm looking at. I do not want to short with puts or anything or sells down in here to the lows. And we may have a gap up in the morning, right? Futures may take it up and we may be already up here potentially in the morning. We'll see. So I got a little bit of divergence in a short time frame on a 30-minute. So may look at that and see if it holds. And we'll be looking maybe at some call scalps or just being patient until that data releases on Tuesday morning tomorrow. All right, QQQ 570 reclaims that. That is a support. You go from 570. Now you're in this channel to about 573 and some change. All right, IWM broke a little bit of a trend here, as you can see, but it reclaimed. So as a trend break retest. Okay. So kind of broke a little bit of that trend right there with a little bit more sellers, and then retesting here. I'm looking for a bigger retest of IWM if this starts to fail underneath this 240 or 237 to break a new low and continue back to 230 like that. Okay. Again, that is one of my A+ setups. I just need to see it play out to see. I'd love to see like one more little pop like that. And if it reclaims, then I'm looking for that top end level, right? I'm looking for that top end level back to 239, 240. That's really where I like it. But sellers stepped in at 237. So if that's the top for right now and we fail it, and then there's some gaps down below, it needs to retest. Big move up, right? From that report last week and Powell, big move up, projected interest rate cuts, grind, and then low liquidity back down to that 230. So that's about a $5 move off the lows. Okay, so IWM getting close to a resistance level. Okay, now what I like to do as well, when I get very interested in like, Brian, what's an A+ setup for you, or why do you like that level versus other levels? We call it macro resistance and macro demand. Okay. Macro resistance or macro support. Okay. Let me just make it simple. Resistance, support, support, resistance. Macro just means that you have, some traders might look at it as 3 touches, 4 touches. It just depends on the trader or the investor. But I like to look at it on a weekly time frame and see that that level has shown me multiple, interactions, I should say. So IWM, I get very interested no matter if it's resistance or support, if it's had multiple interactions on a weekly time frame. So since this is at resistance right now and it's at a weekly resistance, I've got interactions right here at 236, big sellers coming off that 237 all the way back down to 226. I've got it popping up here, a lot of interaction there, a lot of sellers stepping back in. So I get really interested on that weekly level. NVIDIA, okay, anything that's at a weekly level of multiple interactions, right? NVIDIA had multiple interactions up here at this 180 level, getting really heavy no matter what it is. Pushes up, resistance, tries to push up, resistance, breaks back down, pops back up. Multiple interactions back at this 150 level. So that's where I like it, getting a little bit more aggressive is at 150. And then some buyers sitting at this 170, but it's just one bounce there. I'm not really, convinced on that one bounce because then it rejected right there. So Amazon is another good one here to show on a monthly and then a weekly time frame. Do you see on the left here, I have a lot of examples at 233, and then I have a monthly candle rejecting at 233 all the way back down to 210, and then we're right back at it. So a monthly and a weekly, a lot of interactions. Look at this sell candle from 236, and this was earnings, right, back to 213. So what do you think I'm watching on Amazon? I'm getting real interested in this weekly level on Amazon of what it does up here, okay? Because that weekly level is showing something no matter which way it is. A little shaky here as far as, where it goes. But if it breaks that 225, we've got 210 in sight. It breaks above this 237. It got more resistance at 240. So Amazon, a little bit messy on a daily, in my opinion, right in here. But Amazon on a weekly, it's got a lot of interactions back over here at this 233, 234 level. Okay. And you're starting to see some lower highs, some wicks at the top, Buyer stepped in there, but more wicks, kind of this selling weekly candle here. So interested in Amazon. All right, let's keep moving along. Google, strongest name, as we said, back, I think in April or beginning of the summer, I said, watch Google at 150. If you picked up some shares, awesome. If you didn't, that's cool as well. It'll give you another opportunity. But Google monthly candle, look at how that August monthly candle finished. Look at the weekly candle, just a trend upwards, right? So Google, I haven't really liked trading Google more specifically. Shout out to Ben, who's been trading equity on it. I need Google to show me something a little bit more to get interested in trading this above all-time highs. Okay, new all-time highs on Google. Above this 207 level. So as long as it's above 207, Google is going to continue higher. Maybe it wants 220. It tried to touch that 215 a little bit, right? But I don't like this because this is, for options more specifically, the risk to reward, it's in uncharted territory. It's never been up here before. So when I have uncharted territory levels, I just let it play out, right? And let my shares go and wait for the trading opportunity to pull back to a level where I've seen more information. Does that make sense? So I still like Google back at 200, but if it fails back below all-time highs, then, we'll get those levels back again. But I'm kind of waiting on the short on Google. I've been telling folks that for weeks. I really want the short on it. I want it to give me a big weekly push fail, kind of like that, to fill this gap back at 200. So I'm more so looking at that. Can it give me a candle like that? I'll take the retest and then take it down like that. All right. It just needs to cool off just slightly as it's pushing new all-time highs. All right. It doesn't need to, but it should at some point as people get, their last little squeeze out of Google. Okay. RSI's got a little bit higher to go. And I'm not saying it's going to have a massive pullback. I'm just saying that when that kind of 2 to 3% pullback happens, I want to be a part of that short, to be honest with you. And then I'll watch it where the levels are. So Google, not really interested in trading it, just grinding up anymore, at least for options. Apple, the nice bull flag here. As you can see, Apple bounced right at 225. Buyers stepped up. I'll probably be waiting for Apple to just break new highs above this 235, squeeze it into 240. All right. So Apple really, Apple, hasn't retested all-time highs. All right. So Apple's still an opportunity. It's a slower mover, obviously, but Apple is still holding this 225. Any pullback on Apple, I would still say watch for that move all the way back up to here, either by end of the year or into next year. But Apple, it's got to show something, right? Everyone's been talking about Apple just lagging behind, not really showing much promise in the iPhones. People getting frustrated with, iPhones costing more and not having as much into it. So Apple, but there is a lot of daily and weekly resistance up here. So got to pay attention and zoom out. It pushed all the way up into here. People thinking it's new all-time highs, pull back right here, pull back. Then it broke out. You see that above that 236, then can go higher. So watching this new breakout here on Apple above 236, we can take it up to 240 plus, and then we got 250 in sight. So I'd say 250 right there is the target. It'll look something like this on Apple. Just need to find an entry, maybe break and retest. We'll see. Kind of have FOMO on Apple as far as the trade goes when I was looking at it down here at 200, and then that news released. So, yeah, I want a deeper pullback on Apple, but we'll see. Shares still doing well. If you got shares in Apple, still look good. Microsoft, see Microsoft broke this trend. All right, Microsoft could trend back up if the market gets one last little strong move. 500 is really on Microsoft. I haven't traded Microsoft in a while. I kind of miss trading it. And that's the problem with these low liquidity moves right here. It's just, got to wait till it gets to its level. Now it's getting some action. Sellers stepped in, profit taking steps in. The big retest on Microsoft is really back to 465, which will be right there. Okay, so Microsoft breaks 500. You're looking at a downtrend, that probably back down to that 470. Okay. Meta, there's the retest there on Meta. It's a must hold at 730, 740. We'll see. I haven't traded Meta in a while either, but it's got that gap that it's filling from its earnings. As you can see, grinds up, breaks that. Here's a perfect example. I think this is a beautiful example of that A+ setup I'm always talking about. When you get a grind channel up, I just wait for that trend to break. Easy money back down. I don't chase this. If you got long-term shares, you're great. But I don't chase that. I just wait for it to get to its high, show something, break trend, and then we got that, big fall right back. So I'll watch Meta to see if it creates any opportunities, but I haven't traded that in a while either. Tesla got to that 350, rejected, broke out of this triangle here, and there's that retest there. All right, breaks out, pulls back, and we'll see where it holds here. Roughly 330 on Tesla. We'll see where it holds. Don't necessarily like the chart. Probably like all the semiconductors charts. Okay, AMD formed that little bear flag right there. And then I want to see AMD, what it does at this 160 if it double bottoms and AVGO steps up, and we'll get a squeeze back up. If not, then we're pulling all the way back down here underneath that 157. So now that has shown a little bit of a bear flag, this 157, 160 needs to hold up, and we'll see what it does from there. So AMD showing a little bit of weakness, a little bit of bear flag there, and we'll see what it does on this week and next week into September. AVGO, I swear. Okay, I don't think I showed anybody this, but here's what my notes were. Okay, my notes on Friday morning. Cannot make it up. Look at this. There's the date. August 28th. What was that, Thursday? At 11:43 p.m. I'm up at night like, yo, puts, MU, Hood, NVIDIA, AVGO. I swear. I got to have some of this stuff like dated, because I look back and I'm like, was my analysis like, that's why my live, if I got in my live trading group, y'all heard my frustration on Friday. I was like, are you kidding me? I was extremely frustrated because, and it was a good frustration because my analysis was so on point, but the move and my risk to reward got away from me. I would have had to enter 1 minute into the market. And I don't personally like to do that. So look at AVGO, made a move right there off that trend break. That was my A+ setup, breaks trend, and then just falls into that low liquidity area from 309 to 295. Now it's back in support. Okay. And it's got earnings this week. So AVGO is back in support. If earnings are good, it's going to fill that gap right back up, and we're going to be back at highs. Okay. So AVGO watching heavily this week. Beautiful trade on Friday. Just missed the entry. Just happened immediately. I mean, what can you do on a, what was that? A 2-minute drop candle just immediately. Open, just drops in 2 minutes. Like, me. So there's AVGO, high alert, all the semiconductors, everything in purple right here I'm gonna be watching. We already went over MU, TSM, same thing. It's got a gap above. If this starts to break out of this, TSM is another good trading opportunity there, or it breaks down lower. So I'll watch that. ARM, I'd rather trade MU than ARM, so leave that alone. Palantir, there's been a lot of talk on Palantir of what it does here, okay? Is it going to bounce at this 150 level and retest the highs back up, or is this a bear flag? Okay. Does this not look a little bit like that AMD? Okay. We'll see how AMD was supposed to trend back up and kind of break and go back into the highs because it's fallen enough. And then it turns into a bear flag and traps folks. What is this Palantir going to do? It's holding in support, but it hasn't really broken back above this 164 level. If it gets back above that 164, we can probably get a squeeze back to this low liquidity drop right here, and it's going straight to 173. So turn your alerts on. If Palantir gets back above 164, it's going to make roughly about a $5 to $10 move very quickly back through this area. Okay. If it stays underneath this 160, right, it's just going to sit in this channel until something happens. So Palantir is just in this consolidation channel right now, trying to decide what it wants to do. I like the buy zone. It's just, what is the market going to do out of this? So if you want to draw a box like that, Palantir needs to break out of this box, out of that channel. You can see what it does when it does. Breaks up, or does it break back down into this 140 level one more time? I would say this is more of a capitulation drop consolidation, right? A little bit of a scarcity. You see how it dropped down in there and then reclaimed, and it's just sitting. That's more bullish than bearish. Okay. Otherwise, it would have stayed underneath this 153 and then rolled over. So I would consider this more bullish than anything. We just got to wait for that breakout. But Palantir, if you got shares, if you're looking at it, I think it could, potentially pop one more time. Maybe it's a news pop. Maybe something comes out on Palantir and they're like, hey, Palantir partner, blah, 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 whatever. Right. And Palantir just is up here. Kind of like Apple was trending for a while down at the lows, and then Apple just came out of nowhere, right? Apple was trending, consolidating down here. News pops. So the chart's already telling me that it's more of a bullish consolidation. They're waiting for something. So waiting for something. All right. Snowflake, I need to let this settle in. I need to let this settle in because I wanted a big trade on Snowflake on the drop, and it gave a nice candle there. So now I got to wait for the retest. I'd probably just wait for 250 again. But Snowflake, beautiful monthly candle. It's got a lot of room. I mean, if Snowflake gets moving, the highs are back up at 400. It's broken above this weekly high of 239 roughly. So it needs to stay above this. Last time it popped up in there and gave a candle, it sold all the way back down. So buyers sitting right there, Snowflake kind of in a weird zone, but it does have a gap back down to 200. So I'd watch Snowflake, keep it on watch, pull back, wait for it. Could be an opportunity. ZS, let's go into the cybersecurity kind of tech sector. This is the one that has earnings on after hours. Very bullish off that 177 level. Popped up here to 300, went from 168 to 300. Yeah, I don't like anything before earnings, but it is showing, a little bit of hold, pop, hold, and the highs are back here close to 400. So I think ZS wants 400 at some point. PanW, I like these weekly resistances on PanW. I think we traded it a little bit, 190. So these blues right here, I'll be watching when ZS reports. So CrowdStrike, PanW. CrowdStrike got some selling coming in off that 450. All right, some pretty heavy selling, but it's also in a deep support off this 400. So it already pulled back enough. Downtrend, decent earnings. That could just be a retest potentially. Downtrend, breakout, retest, and then maybe go. Let me check chat. Rounding out here at the top of the hour. I'm sorry, ABCD. What's going on? Are you trading options if you're still here? Are you trading options or prop firm? No, I'm trading options, so I'm trading my own money. That's a great question. You've been planning to short Microsoft for a while now. Yeah, and it kind of happened, so I missed my entry. Tanvir. I appreciate you reminding me of that. So yeah, if that makes sense. So I trade options. I do trade futures prop firms, right? So I've talked about this before that prop firms are really good for a futures market. So I use TopOne Futures. I've talked about that before. Okay. I use TopOne Futures. I am affiliated with them. I think they're great. I only affiliated with them because I liked the platform. They use Project X. I like that platform. I think it's very good for newbies, people that don't know anything. It's a really nice layout. It also allows you to go straight to funding. So the problem sometimes with prop firms in the futures market is that people are trying to pass evaluations, right? And you're just giving money to those people, right? Pass evaluation. Okay, I didn't even get payouts or anything like that. And that's how they make their money. But if you know how to trade, which is what we're doing here, teaching the charts, things like that, then you can go to an instant sim funded. So that just means you're instantly funded with the money. Okay. So I think that's a great opportunity. If you see here, if I go to just say if most people in our community do the 50,000, if I go to instant sim and you use my code, it typically gets a little bit more off of there. So Dr. B is the code, apply. And you see there it removes $356. So you pay $291, right, to get $50,000 of funding towards your trading. So you have to, hit certain mile markers and whatnot, but that's why the futures market, or you see on these YouTube streets, like, yeah, I do prop firms. Yeah, I don't use my own money, that type of stuff. But those are the traders that know how to trade, right? Or that know how to read a chart, price action, the news, stuff like that. So you'll hear people, I'm just throwing it out there, you'll hear people say that, hey, you should do a prop firm. But if they aren't teaching you how to chart, or here's how to actually trade, then, you'll just keep giving money to these prop firms. And you're like, man, I failed again. Okay, let me try again. And personally, that's why I like options or teaching options and trading your own money, because, you can start with a couple $100, do, one contract, two contracts, things like that. And you made $50 for the day, right? And you can pull that to the bank immediately and get used to trading, and then, move to prop firms or move to, futures and whatnot. So, or you can not use any of the money and just, trade, what is it? Here you go. Paper trade. So on Webull, there's paper trading. So we've had people come into the community and say, hey, Brian, I just want to paper trade with you. I paid for the membership. I just want to paper trade for, a week or so. I think Dreama did that. She paper traded for about 2 weeks and then just started making money. All right. But still came in the membership. I didn't wait until she got everything down. So however you want to do it, however you want to learn, but you don't have to put a lot of risk, right, into the market, right? So when you understand how these days and how to trade properly, like on Friday, you could have turned 50, I hate saying this, but $50 into $800. That AVGO move on Friday that I just showed, this drop right here, contracts were about 40 to $50 at open. And then they went immediately like $200. And I'm like, I missed the move. So $50 into right at open goes to about 800. Does that help, ABCD? Would love to know your name. If you want to just put in your first name, just kind of like to address people by their name. But does that make sense? Yes, I live trade daily. Yep. Oh, that's a good question. Stefan or Stefan? Yeah, I'll answer that too. Dr. B, do you live trade daily on Zoom or Discord with your community? I have both. So I live trade on Discord, but I also have a Zoom link just in case people, aren't able to, join Discord or whatever. I have both abilities because sometimes, people can't log in quick enough or they have their Zoom ready or whatever. So yeah, if anyone in the, community right now wants to, put in the chat like, hey, I'm inside, blah, 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 if you want to, but I don't ask any of my community members to tell anyone to do anything. People can just stay on this free YouTube. I think if you want to, make some money, I've give some trades out here, right? I give trades out. Tanvir, you probably made a little bit of money or whatnot, but the nuance of teaching live is different. That's the thing. When the charts are moving and you're hearing me talk and you're hearing me say, hey, I'm entering starters. Hey, I'm entering now. Here's the stop loss. Here's the contract I'm choosing, right? That's a little bit different than just hearing me talk on a Sunday. That's the difference. All right. For options, when do you set the close 1 week? For options, when do you set the close 1 week? Okay, so you're talking about contract selection. I need to do a YouTube video on that this week. I've got YouTube videos lined up for this week for teaching purposes. So contract selection is a big thing for a lot of options people. Like, I don't know what contract to select. Okay. If you are new to options, let me just go to NVIDIA. Okay. Take notes really quick. Take notes really quick. Even for anyone that's already inside of my community, take notes. Okay. This little reminder. The first step is charting on the actual charts what kind of trade idea I want to have. Okay. So what that means is if I have a blank chart here, okay, I'll start at the daily time frame. Actually, I'll start at the weekly, right? I'll start at the weekly time frame and look who has control in the short term. I've had 3 weekly red candles and I've had a failure. Look above, you see these buyers, the wicks of the candles tell us that who has control or what selling is or buying is coming in, right? So this was a big green candle and it sold off back down and that top wick shows that sellers are heavy. Then the buyers pick back up because buyers have control over this big, large weekly uptrend. Okay. So they didn't take control or the sellers would have had control coming down like that and you would have had a candle follow. Okay. So that's what's going on in my mind is I'm analyzing the weekly chart, who has control and what kind of pressure is coming on the market. Okay. So NVIDIA right now had great earnings. Okay. A little bit skewed because of one piece of data that wasn't reported in this earnings. Right. So I want to chart the daily. I'll come into the daily and I'll look at this chart and I'm like, this is giving me very heavy selling pressure right now. That's a heavy level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times, roughly 10 times, NVIDIA just struggled and trapped anyone that was trying to buy into that level, trapping them, pulling them back down. All right. But if I go down here, I work from my right to my left. Here's where NVIDIA is. So I always mark. Next step, I mark where we are now. Okay. So that candle right there is where we stopped on Friday. The low of that candle is 173. the candle closed at 174.15 or 174.18. So that is technically support right now. And if I go to my left, remember when I said support, former resistance becomes support. Okay. So this is why I've got a weekly selling pressure. I've got also a lot of daily selling pressure, but we're also back in support. Right? So we're kind of in this channel here like that. Y'all see that? So it's channel trading. Channel trading, you just go up, down, up, down, up, down, and you can trade the channel as long as that channel holds. So if I go down to my 4-hour, more specifically on Webull, which is why I like Webull, more specifically for charting, I still use Robinhood, right? A lot of you came on here for my Robinhood legend trading video. If you still trade on Robinhood, I still trade on it, right? I still love it. But my little secret sauce is I'm able to see the gaps on Webull. So this happened overnight. It dropped. And I know that typically those gaps like to get filled. So if we're in support and this holds, what type of trade, put down below, do you think I'd be looking for in support? Do you think I'd be looking for calls or puts in support? All right. Calls, right? So my mind is we're in support. I'm not going to be thinking about entering more puts after a big drop like this immediately. You want to consider puts in resistance and you want to consider calls. The reason why I say consider is that this could break. That's why I don't have a definitive answer. Hey, always take calls and support. Well, what if that support breaks? Always take puts at resistance. Well, what if it breaks out and it never, rejects? Consider calls at support, consider puts at resistance. So that's why I would be considering calls on NVIDIA, even though it has a very strong weekly kind of resistance here and candle, I'd be considering calls back up. Now, what if I don't like that trade? You don't have to take the trade. You can wait for your trade setup to kind of mature. So what if I think a bigger trade is NVIDIA falling and breaking this and coming down into that 160 and 150? Maybe I want to wait for NVIDIA and say, man, I'm just going to wait for my trade. I want NVIDIA to pop. I'm going to miss the calls. I'm going to wait for NVIDIA to pop up here, right? We did this on Hood a couple of weeks ago. We waited for Hood to pop. I'm going to go over Hood as well, Dream, if you're on here. Waited for it to pop. I didn't chase calls. I didn't like them. Waited for it to pop and shorted it right back down. There's your big move. All right. So that is lesson kind of 1 is charting. So I'm still answering the question here is, well, what expiration do you choose? Okay. So if I'm on NVIDIA and I see a macro support, okay, and it's the beginning of the week, right? For anyone that's new, I always recommend putting at least a week to 2 weeks on your contracts if you're day trading, okay? If you're trading on your own and you're not in a community, right? Because my community members inside of Leverage, we take weeklies even though they're new. But because I'm guiding, right, I can say with a stop loss, hey, I'm out, so on and so forth. If you're trading on your own, you just enter something and leave and your expiration is on Friday and you don't know necessarily what to do, I would say that is a mistake, right? So I would come into my options and if I charted it, I'm like, okay, I like calls. I see it going back up to about 175. I would immediately go into like September 12th or September 19th, right? And that's where that 2-week time frame, does that help a little bit, Stefan? Is immediately go to those dates and you start analyzing, oh man, there's, I could do a 185 call and that could move. So you do not have to always do in the money. Okay. So this is a whole lecture. I'm a teacher. I'm a coach as an educator. So I have to stop myself at times, but if this is good for you, this is what happens inside the community. right? I'm also thinking about creating like a little short course. So if y'all want that, I know sometimes it's hard to find on YouTube, all the videos and stuff. So if y'all want a little mini course and me create that for a small fee, let me know that. Intro to options or something like that. But 185 is kind of that realistic level that it can go back up to. If it pops like that, there's your 184, 185. All right, very similar to here. Buyers 172, back up to 184. What, 170, 172, back up to 184. So what do you think I'm looking at here? 185 calls potentially if that level holds. And that's where a newbie or someone new could say, man, I can spend $180 for 2 weeks on an expiration, right? Well, Brian, the next question is, everyone wants to know about the money. Everyone wants, well, how much would that be? $180 is a lot of money. That's a bill. That's something. Like, okay, you spend $180 on dinner, right? You go out and spend $180. If that contract reverts all the way back up to the highs, depending on when it does, that contract could be worth $500 to $700. So you just profited $600 in a short amount of time, depending on when it happens. There's other nuances. I don't want to get into those like theta decay and how long it takes and whatnot. But all you need to know is I have 2 weeks, right? I've got a good entry. I've got time and I didn't spend a lot of money. Does that help? Everybody, give me a 5 down in the chat if that helps you a little bit. Just understanding how I pick a contract, right? I do weeklies at the beginning of the week, right? Typically Monday, Tuesdays, I look at weekly contracts. If it's an A+ setup, so that means I'm choosing the same week expiration, but I'm out the same day. I don't really hold weekly contracts. If it's not moving in my way, I cut it. And that's where I think a lot of people make mistakes personally when they start trading options. I entered on Monday and it was green, and then by Friday, it's like red. Yeah, because you held it too long, because there's a tax every day called theta decay, right? Options aren't difficult. I think people just don't have they're not the bandwidth to pay attention and learn, right? And the futures market is great. I love it. But the only problem with futures sometimes for a lot of people is that they don't know how to trade the charts just yet. So then they don't make money immediately. So you keep paying the prop firm, paying the prop firm, paying the prop firm. And then finally I get a payout, but I've already paid them $600-700, right? So I think personally options traders make better futures traders. Just don't say that right now. All right. I think options traders make great long-term investors because we have to have proper entries. Does that make sense? Like we have to have sniper entries. That means that I'm barely in drawdown. I don't have barely any red in my trades if it's a proper trade. If it's going red, I cut it, re-enter. Does that help? Okay, cool. Must understand charts, price action. Nobody can teach you that without putting in work. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't have to join a community. You don't have to pay anybody. It just means you need to put in the work. So that means getting on the charts, paper trading, entering a trade, trying it. Man, why'd that go red? Why'd that call not? Why'd that contract? Oh, it was too far out of the money. Like you can learn on your own if you want to. All right. Appreciate everybody. Cool. That gives you a little bit of starter. That's how. So summary, chart first. Second, where is it going from level to level? So pick your levels. And then I go into the options and I'm like, okay, I've charted it. I know where it's going. I know it's support. I know I want to look at calls. I know I want to look at puts. And then I choose my contract, right? I start with the expiration date first. And then I pick the specific strike price, as we call it, right? All right. I specifically pick the strike price that I want. So if it's a longer dated contract, I can go a little bit further. So you see here calls and puts. So same thing in Robinhood. If you're looking at your Robinhood, calls and puts. Okay. The ask price is the price of the contract. Well, why is it, $187? Because it's 100 shares per contract. Each contract includes 100 shares. So that's why it's 1.87. So times that by 100. That's $187. Okay. So I can go a little bit further out of the money but I do not want to select a 185 call with a weekly contract. It's a little bit too far in my opinion. So I tell my community, hey, let's keep it in the money. Let's keep it right around here. So if I entered NVIDIA this week and we wanted to scalp it, or maybe where is it going by the end of the week, I could see NVIDIA safely back to 177.5, 180 if it makes that big squeeze, because we just charted it, right? There's 180 right there. So that's very much possible on NVIDIA to make a straight up move back by the end of the week if data is good. So if you got 185 for 2 weeks out, that's a safer contract, right? Even though it's out of the money. That means it's away from where it is now. So weekly, I'm going to choose a different strike price. Maybe the 175s, 177.5s. If I go into September 12th, right, I can maybe do those, and maybe the 185s might work there as well, right? Again, in summary, you do not have to have it at the strike price to make money. So it does not have to get to 185 for you to make money. You just have to have the proper entry and go. All right. That's another common question in options. Well, what if it doesn't get to 185? As long as you are entering properly, it makes a move in your direction. It's making moves in an upward direction. If you're in calls, you're making money, but you may want to take it out because it loses value the longer you hold that contract. All right. So we're getting into our final piece here. Any other questions, thoughts, perspectives? The white on my watch list are things that you want to watch for long-term shares, buying. I know a lot of folks are looking at Oscar. That's one right here that's kind of showing promise. Oscar Health, the whole healthcare sector. TTD is starting to show a little bit. A lot of our community members or some of them are already in this. You see TTD is falling into this support. Big gap above TTD. Shares, I think, are great. I think personally, call options, leap options out until 2027. Put a year on this. This is when I look at yearly leap options. You enter and hold for, a year, 6 months, whenever the move happens, and you just kind of wait it out. It takes patience. It takes patience. So I think TTD personally, price target, I got at 80, but first price target is roughly around 70 to 75. Okay. So TTD is one of those. Kava is another one I'm watching. Trent, I know, has been waiting on this one. Kava still in this kind of downtrend channel, as you can see. Last time it was in this downtrend channel on the channel, it popped up from 70 back to 99. Okay. Sitting back in this zone again, right? Same looking chart as TTD, kind of in this falling wedge. So a falling wedge just kind of grinds and it pops when it's ready. And that's when buyers step back up. So Kava as well in options, and also it's a good share price. So if you only trade shares, I think Kava personally price target, same price target, roughly 80 to 90 bucks. Lululemon, that's this week. So I don't know if Lululemon is going to turn into another bear flag and fall lower. This is what I was talking about. All right. Is Lululemon going to fall a little bit lower? I think it's great for shares. I think it's great for shares. I think it's a great starter position for options. All right. I think it's a great starter position. So we want to pay close attention to this. It is a bigger mover. Options contracts are pretty pricey. But I think great risk to reward on Lululemon. Let's see here. Trying to see if anything out of the money towards like the end of the year, January. There's still $300, $200. November, those 280s, those could be, decent if that pops. And the only reason I'm looking at that is because last time in August, it went from 230 back to 400 during the holidays. All right. And Lululemon's got a massive gap right here. And what if it pops again during the holidays one last time and pops back to 280 again, just like that? It has done it before. Lululemon can move from 348 back down to 240. It can move $100 very quickly. So I'm not going to call anything on this because I don't know if it's going to fall one more time. I'm just saying that it's at a good risk to reward. That means it's back in that monthly level, kind of like Ethereum was back at 1500, right? 180 went all the way back up to damn near 500, right? And pulled all the way back to where big money wants it, back at this 180 to 200. So what do you think? It looks good. This is where long-term shares or long-term investors get very interested. Okay. UPS still got questions, but again, UPS is back in this buyer zone. Yeah, I just gonna keep watching that. It's a slower mover. So Merck, healthcare sector starts to pop, starts to base down here. That could be interesting. I got a price target of 100 plus on Merck. HIMS, I love it. Down at this 40 level, I like it even better. Down at 30, and you see HIMS is on this trend line. So right there, right there, right there, right there. I drew the trend line right there, and if it pops down a little bit lower down into here, roughly mid 30s, that'd be even better. But $40 is a buy zone for HIMS. You can see right there, and we'll see if it holds 40. Right, but still forming lower highs, still kind of rolling over here. So I may wait on that just a little bit. CNC, been talking about this every single week. CNC in the insurance healthcare space, that doctorate is real. It is a pharmacist. Okay, so healthcare space, kind of bread and butter here on some of these companies. I went to pharmacy school in St. Louis. This is a St. Louis-based company, so I do not have any insider trading on it. I just know the company pretty well. And there's nothing wrong with this company. Okay. So it's in a buyer zone at 28 bucks. I got a price target of 40 in the short term. Okay. Shares are good. And yeah, broke out of this little falling wedge, starting to get a little higher low here, and it could pop to 40 very quickly. So CNC, I've got shares at $26 on CNC. United Health, another big one, starting to base here. That could pop pretty soon. Nice little monthly candle engulfing maybe the last monthly, and then the weekly holding up above that 294 with a nice hammer candle forming there. If it breaks above that 326, yeah, we're going to start moving. So just want to watch it. Lilly, need to wait for a pullback. Shout out to James, his first 10K trade on Eli Lilly. James is a community member. He's also a moderator. I made him a moderator in the community as well. Been trading since 2023, I think. Yeah, 2023. He was always a long-term investor, but he started off learning swing trading. So he's trying to learn scalping a little bit more, how to day trade a little bit more scalping. So James is very good in his swing trading opportunities. You do have to spend a little bit more money in the swing trading, but it could be worth it, right? And you have to have a little bit more patience. So both ways work. I like to wait a little bit longer for my swing trades. James kind of enters at certain levels. So he had his first 10K trade. That trade took roughly maybe 2 weeks to play out. Yeah, roughly about 2 weeks to play out. 10K profit. Cool. All right. I think that's it. Any final questions? Anything I can educate on? Final questions? We're at the top of the hour, about an hour and a half in, right at Tom. That MP is starting to work out too. I've been talking about that for weeks. Man, I'm just going to record it and draw it out to existence here. If that happens, oh my goodness. Like it's in this little channel here and it's starting to get real heavy up here underneath that 75 level. If that 70 breaks again, it could get pretty aggressive back into 60 and back into 50. So I see these top wicks on this weekly. This is not something I've traded before. It's not something I regularly trade, but I know it's one of those kind of 2025 pops. You know, those companies that just pop out of nowhere and like, yo, did you see that? And then it cools off. Very similar to Core Weave, right? Very similar to this Core Weave. Pops right here, all the way from, everyone chasing it $50 to 187, pulls all the way back. So MP kind of giving the same thing up here roughly. So may want to watch that channel. If I'm looking at 50, I'd look for fairly cheap too. October 17th, $70. Sheesh. If that happens, y'all got to run. That's cool. I'm just look. That gap fills be $40 to $700 roughly, depending on when it happens. Man, I should just put it in a different my long-term brokerage. Just be like, yeah, if this happens, it happens. Just spend $50 and kind of treat it as a strategic lotto. Do y'all see what I'm seeing? Like, I see those gaps. I see it, my A+ channel setup. I see some heavy resistance. I see some lower highs. Am I tripping? Like, overextended RSI. Let me see, a pullback level would be roughly to about this 60 that held right there, and then another pullback level would be right here at 50. So that zone is a decent pullback zone, and these would be those levels. Could you please do a TA on a firm ran up after earnings, UPS with rate cuts looming? Yeah, firm was a good short on Friday. Beautiful short. I'd retest it at 95. This was a look above and fail right now, at least. Right up into that weekly and monthly resistance. So I don't like that big fail of 100, but it is forming higher lows. So I'd like it to pull back a little bit deeper, give the whole gap fill back roughly, depending on what type of trade you're trying to take, right? So again, I don't like to chase when there's a gap below and it pushes up into this weekly resistance underneath the $100, but I think that was their price target where they wanted to grab liquidity. So how would I trade this? I trade it two ways. One is if it breaks back above $90, right? Back above 90, you can probably get that squeeze back into 95 and 100 trying to retest the highs like this, right? So that's what I would be looking for in the short term. Is it for it to break back above 90? Okay. That previous high right there, 89.60, where it rejected pretty hard. But 90, just that psych level, break above 90, you can get that 95 push for calls. Or if it rejects underneath 90 and keeps falling and trending down here, this gap fill, you could watch for a break of the lows and take it further into 80 and 82. But the big trade I'd probably be watching anytime this happens is I like a retest of the high because it is a little bit overextended. Retest of the high, and then I want that full gap fill back down. That's typically what goes on my mind when I see a pop like that. All right. So retest of the high, fail one more time, and then I want a double top gap fill back down. It's about 3 trades you can take. I'd say the one for this week would probably be a nice maybe recovery in the short term, and then see where it goes from there. Upstart, it's building right now. It has not taken off yet. When is this earnings? It already happened on the 5th. Upstart's basing at $70. Like, this is a reclaim basing at 70. It's trying to get back to that 90 level, 85 to 90. Right. So it looks something like this. So trying to retest those highs is what I like on that. It's in this low volume area of drop right now. So your target is back to, that's actually not a bad chart, back to $80. You go from 73 back to about 80 to 85. So UPST and also Affirm. I probably like UPST a little bit better. I'd probably let Affirm kind of settle in a little bit more. You can see what happens after earnings. Just let that settle in. Earnings was on the 5th on UPST, and it kind of settled in and finally gave a nice level where you can trade off of. Does that help? Yeah, no problem. Yep. Cool. All right, everybody. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day. Let's have a great week. I'll see y'all in Leverage University. If you're not inside, in the Discord tomorrow morning, bright and early. We're watching the semiconductor sector. We'll watch that. We'll watch the price action of the overall market, and we'll watch some of these side ones that had earnings with Affirm and UPST. Appreciate you, Tanvir. And other than that, keep your eye on the markets. We look forward to having you inside or our next Stock Sermon Sunday. Keep your eye on the videos. Share the channel out with anybody. And I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.